Hi, and in this tutorial we begin our Laravel series where we are going to explore all common design patterns that are being used in web development, and of course we're going to do practical examples. And so this is our first lesson. Maybe you can tell that this is our first tutorial, and we're going to begin with builder pattern because it's one of the most common patterns that is being used in Laravel in many internal classes like a DB class or HTTP or any other classes. And that's why we begin with this builder pattern, and we're going to see how you can practically use this pattern in your Laravel application. In our case, we're going to build a report system. So for example, let's imagine that you have some data and you want to put this data in different formats like a JSON, or for example, it can be even XML format or PDF. That's why we're going to use this pattern, because we want to have a flexible class that we are going to use to build reports as we want, with different formats and with different data and different customization. So let's begin with some theoretical information. And first of all, you need to know definition of builder pattern. If you already know, it's great, but still it's good to repeat. So just read this. The builder design pattern is a creational pattern that separates the construction of complex object from its representation, allowing the same construction process to create different representations. It is especially useful when an object needs to be created with many optional parts or configurations. So let's move on to real life example. It will be just maybe a better explanation what we just imagine that you go to some burger restaurant and you want to order burger, and restaurant always gives you opportunity to customize your burger that you want to order. For example, you want to add some extra cheese, or for example, you don't want to add any cucumber, or you don't want any meat, you're vegan for example, so you customize burgers as you want, and in the end you get a burger that you want. And you have different steps that you follow to construct this burger. For example, step when we don't want any meat, you're vegan, we just skip for example step is preparing some meat or stuff like that. So this is just a really simple but a nice example how builder pattern is working. You just customize object with some specific parameters that you want, and just imagine this like a burger customization. I think it will be helpful for you. Now let's move on to YAML schema. Just to better understand how it's working, we're going also to visit Refactoring Guru website just to see how they explain this builder pattern. And of course, it's not any advice, sorry, any you know advisement. It's just true that Refactoring Guru is one of the greatest websites with design pattern examples. So we're going to see it. But first, let's take a look for this YAML schema. And so let's see what we will have. First of all, we have iBuilder. In our case, this is interface of our builder. It can have all different instructions which functions should be created, is required to be created in class that will implement this interface. And after this, you can see we have report builder, and we have custom functions here like set format, set data source, set filters. It's just example functions, but there can be as many as you want. There can be not only setter functions, but many other different functions. And this report builder, this is the main class that will be used by us in our application to build reports. Because in the end, you can see that we get report, and this report can be in different formats like a JSON report or PDF report. Everything is constructed by using this class. Just remember about this, and remember about this interface, that this interface is also important part, because as I said, in this interface, we define all functions that will be required to be created and defined in your report builder. So now I think I think it's time to move on to refactoring Guru website just to quickly see their examples. And after this, we will start quickly implementing this in our Laravel application. Okay, so currently I am on this refactoring Guru website, and we can see this is builder pattern. Just a great example and great article that I also recommend you to read after this video just to understand better all context how it's working if you don't remember or if you don't know if, you know about builder pattern. So let's just move on to some examples, and of course let's read before some definitions. So builder is a creational design pattern that lets you construct complex objects step by step. The pattern allows you to produce different types and representations of an object using the same construction code. So this is what I said. We have different steps, and it's like a burger production. We customize our burger whatever we like. So let's move on to solution. And also there is a good example which problem it creates. So in case if you don't use builder pattern, you will need to create for each burger type a different separate classes, like a cheeseburger class, or for example I don't know, Big Mac class, or burger vegan burger, and it's making our system complicated because we are building too much different classes just to have different objects, and that's not good. So that's why we should use builder pattern to make easy customizable objects with builder. So we can see in they have a great example with house creation. So we have different steps like a build vault, build doors, build windows, and get results, and in the end we get house. So yeah, that's just a great example. Because as you can see, we get here, we do here customization. For example, we want to have big windows, or we don't want any windows, for example, and in the end we will get house that we want. Just keep this in your mind. So also there is a good example of director class. It's not required to create this director, but it's good, for example, if you have some controller and you want just call one function in director class to create an object with builder. But yeah, but I will show you how to use director too. So there is also a nice instruction, great schema how it's working. So in our case, you can see we have builder interface where we define all steps, and we can create different builders. For example, concrete builder 1 have different steps, and it creates product 1. In case of concrete builder 2, we create product 2 with some custom steps too. And director, as I mentioned, it's not required, but you can use it, and I will explain you later how to use it. So yeah, that was just a good example. Now let's open our Visual Studio Code and let's begin. So first of all, I created here domains folder because I liked to make everything with domain-driven design. And first, let's create here a new folder that will be named report. Inside report, let's create entities, and let's create report.php. As you remember, in our YAML schema, we had a class that was named report. So that will be our entity, and that's what we are going to build first, because everything begins with entities that we are going to create. So class report, we can type here public function construct. So yeah, let's define fields of this class. So first it will be public string title. We can define here the default title, or maybe let's just type here default report, and let's move on to the next variable, and it will be previewed. So for example, let's imagine that there is some data range between 2 dates when this report was created. So that's why we add here period variable. And now let's imagine that we will have rows that will store some data, and also some totals. Some totals that also will store some information. And now, as in all entities, let's create two array. It's not required for you to have classes like I built, just it's not required, to have a two array function. In my case, I will create this because it will be needed for me in future for my report class. Just keep in mind that your class, it can be even some model or even some different class with many different functions. So it's not required to build the same structure as I. Just remember that it will be the final product that we will produce with our, as I said, builder. So title, it will be, okay, sorry, I need to fix my button. Okay, it's working. Period is equal to this period. So rows is equal to this rows, and totals is equal to this totals. Great, that's amazing. Now let's move on to the next part, because we will need to create a new folder that will be named builders. Yeah, that's how I want to call this folder. You can define different name, for example, I didn't know, components or something like that, or services, it's also a nice name, but in my example, just to keep all context, that's how I will name my folder. So we will have interface where we are going to define all functions of our builder, report builder, and let's just think what we will require here. So first we will need to have a reset function, because for example after we finish editing some stuff and we created a new report, we will need to reset everything. So reset everything in builder, so that's why we add this function. Next, let's have a set title. So set title, string title, and it will return static. So object of builder, public function set period, and we type here array period static, and of course we need set rows. Okay, set rows, array rows, and it's equal to static. We can also add here function, for example add row, and we will accept arrays, it will be row, and we also return here static. Why I returned here always static? It's really simple explanation. So for example, if you want to use builder like this, for example, we created some builder and some object, and just to have easy customization with one line, for example, to call all functions for customizations that I want, I will just to have function calls like this. So for example, I first call set title. I type here set title. After this, I want to define description. I again type my test description, and for example then I call build. So you can see I don't need to call each function separately. I can just do this by one call to our object of class that we have. Okay, now let's add here set totals, so it will be also array. As we remember, we defined it in our entity of report is totals is array, so we type here array totals, and the next important thing, this is formatter. So we will have interface, it will named formatter, and it will format our report to different format if we want. And we will get also here, have here get report functions. It will return report entity. So this is final product that we will get after using our builder. So this is our interface, and we defined all functions that will be required to create in our builder. Now let's create a new folder that will be named formatters, maybe it will be better, and we will create interface formatter.php, because you remember that I defined that in our interface for builder we have this interface. And just remember that this is also a great example of using polymorphism, because we don't define here concrete implementation of some class, which is defined here interface that can have many forms, and there can be different formats. Just remember about that. And now this formatter will have only one function, and it will be called report, and it will be used in our application just to render some different reports in different formats. And each format class will implement this interface. Now let's add here formatter. Let's just type it like that. Domains report formatter. Okay, great. So we now have entity, and we have all interfaces that are required for us. The next step, it will be to create our report builder. So let's type here report builder.php, and we type here namespace builders. And as I mentioned, this is just a practical example. You can see that we follow here solid principles. We do everything as it should be in real application. Okay, let's define this class. So report builder, it will implement our iReport builder, and yeah, we also need to import this class here. Also, we will need to import our report entity, and also we will need to import here our formatter interface. So okay, great. Now we need to define here protected report. So of course, as I mentioned, we are going to build a new product, and in our case this is report. This report builder will have a report variable of type report entity to save all data that we will customize inside this report variable. And next thing, this is formatter. So formatter, remember about polymorphism. So format, there can be different formats, for example JSON and JSON or XML or PDF. And if we want, we can define that we want to different kind of, oh yeah, I see, domains, sorry for that. Now let's define constructs. So when we will create a new builder pattern, when we will create a new builder for reports, we will need to reset everything. so that's why we call here reset. And now let's define function reset that we defined previously in our iReport builder. So it will reset all data related to report. So we basically just type here report equals to new report, and that means that we create a new report entity from 0. Now let's define functions and title, and it will be pretty simple. We just accept here title as we define in our interface, and we type that this report title is equal to title, and again we return this because we want to call a lot of different functions after we call set title or any other functions that we have in our report builder. Now we need to define set period, so we type here array period, again static, and again it's just define value of period, so we type here period. Of course, as I mentioned previously, all these functions, it can be not only just, you know, some setters or getters or something like that. You can define a lot of different other functions, and we will see another example of internal Laravel classes that use this pattern to allow you build customizable objects. So now let's define add row. It will be pretty easy. Array row static. Yeah, and now let's type here report rows. So we want to add a new row, so we type here add new row. We again return this. Now let's define set totals. So we type here set totals array totals. That's what our function accepts, and this report totals, so we change totals value. We type here totals, and we again return this. And finally we define set formatter function and yeah, it should return static, and we define that our formatter here will be formatter that we will provide from function, and again we return this object. So finally let's define get report, and as you remember in interface we define that get report returns report entity. So we define here this report, and it will be the final product that we get. And also we will have a build. In my case, build will be just used to render report. So I will just type here response this formatter. As you can see, I do request to formatter that we are going to create, and I give this formatter my report, and after this I reset everything and I return response, and it will render my report in different formats like JSON or PDFs or XML if I want. And you can see that again this is a great example of polymorphism, because I don't create any specific implementation of formats, of formatter I mean. I use interface, and that means that I can create different formats whatever I like, and I don't need to define by myself that if we have format like a JSON, then I need to call JSON format or something like that. I just call render function for formatter, because all format classes will implement formatter interface. Great, that looks amazing. And now we can move on to our formats. And for now, let's create a JSON report. Okay, JSON report, and it will be the first thing that we are going to test with you. So we type here JSON report, and we will implement formatter interface. Let's import this interface here. So we type here app domains report formatters and formatter. Oh, okay, formatter, great. And now we need to define here required function, and it was render, and it accepts our entity of report because we're going to use this entity to get some um, data that we're going to convert into JSON. And it's pretty easy in our case, so we will just return here response JSON, and we'll just type here to array. Of course, I can make like a JSON object that I will render here, but in my case you can see that I just make return a JSON response, and that means that I will render it in JSON format. Now, before we are going to test this, we need to do another very important thing. And if you know what is service container in Laravel, so basically, when you have any interfaces and you want to correctly bind them to your class, you need to register them here, or you can also do this by using app function. But just remember that your interfaces for your classes, you need to define here, and let's type here that report builder class will be implemented in report builder class. So yeah, it's really important because in Laravel you can't automatically implement interface. You need to bind this to your class. That's really important because it's service container, and in some cases it works automatically when you, for example, put it in a constructor of your class or something like that. Great. Now I think it's time to create finally work controller that we're going to use to test all the stuff. So I will name this report controller. Great. Let's go to HTTP report controller, and now we need to define all data that we will test. So in our case, let's type here construct, and I will have here my report builder. And this is example of dependency injection. You can see that I define my report builder here as object class, as object of class that I will call to create a new reports. So just remember about that, because I did want to type here like new report builder. So that's why I create report builder in my construct function with dependency injection. It's really important, so remember about that and use it because it's really helpful in development. And maybe we can call this like get JSON report, something like that. Okay, that looks great. And now let's imagine that we will have some rows, we will have some data. So we will have 2 rows. Let's imagine that we will have some date like 200, I don't know this, and we will have some orders. This is just example data. You can put here whatever you like, and in my case, let's imagine that I have some orders data. Yeah, now let's just copy this stuff, yeah, and let's define here 150 orders. Great. And let's add another row, and let's change date to 3 to okay. And now let's define some totals. So we will first get totals of our orders. So we will use here array sum, and we will use here array column to get orders. So we will just get all order columns and make sum of them here. That's why we call here array sum and totals. Sorry, revenue. We will also calculate all revenue that we have in our rows. So that's why we use here again array sum, array column. So I don't know if you heard about these functions if you're a junior developer, but it's also really helpful, when you're working with a lot of different arrays. Okay, and now let's define some periods. So in my case, it will be from 20 like this, 1 and 2. Okay, great. So this is test data that we are going to use. In real application, of course, you will have, like database connections. You will get all this data from some service, from some model stuff. But in our case, we are going just to get everything from, we will just create everything as test variables. So now let's create a new report. In our case, we call report builder. After this, we type reset, but it's not required because we already done reset when we created here, but just for confirmation, let's call reset again. And now I'm going to build customization of my report. So let's type here August 2025 report. So you can see I can now define custom title of my report. Now I can define period. So I type here set period. I can now define which data that will be used in this report. I can define set totals, and it's not required for me to call all these functions because it will have just default values. And now I can define my set formatter. So I will call here JSON report because I want to have here JSON report. And as you remember, in our report builder, we have here get report, so I can get my report, and that's what we are going to do first. And after this, we are going to see how it will be rendered. So first, let's get our final product, and this is customizable report objects that we created here. And now, after we finish it with our report controller, let's type here report JSON. This is just for example for now. And let's define route to test this index function, report controller index. And yes, it's all. Let's save it. And now let's start our local server. I will copy this and I will go to my browser, and we are going to see what I will get when I will go to, you see my browser, great. What I will get when I will go to report JSON. Go to undefined methods, app controllers, index. Okay, so looks like I did some mistake in my code. So let's get back here, report controller. Oh, sorry, I type here get JSON reports. That's my mistake. So let's type here and it should work now. Let's refresh our local server. You can see that I got report. In my case, this is entity of report, and you can see everything is customizable. And as I mentioned previously, it's not required for me to call all these functions that they have here. For example, if I don't want to set totals, I can just remove it. And let's save it, and let's see what I will get here. You see totals is empty, and that's the main feature of using builder pattern. You are customizing your objects. You do whatever you like. You can create now customizable objects easily with using builder. That's why this pattern is called builder, because you build your objects with customizable stuff, with custom steps that you implement. Now I think when we saw how it's easy to create report objects, and we follow it really, we did everything that is required for builder pattern, we can now, for example, not just get report, we can type here build to render our report. So I will just type here report, return report. And let's open our browser again. Let's refresh, and you can see my formatter did converted all data into JSON, because as you remember in our JSON report, I convert my report first to array, and after that it's converted to JSON. So this is a great example of using also different formatters, different format classes to convert our report to different formats. Now I want to show you also what is director class, because I mentioned about director class, and we can create this report director here. So let's type here report director. And as you remember in refactoring guru, we saw that report director, this is class that can control report builder, can use report builder to easily create objects for your builder, like that, something like that. Sorry if I sound not really understandable. Okay, so report builder, that's what we are going to get here. So we create a new so we accept here in the report director any builder that follows report builder interface. And now I can just define here make basic, something like that. So it will be called make basic, and make basic will accept all functions, sorry, not all functions, but variables that are required for our entity, yes, for our report entity to create it. So yeah, 1 second, I have something. Okay, so let's just imagine that we have here string title, and I forgot about which. Okay, so period, so array period, and next thing it will be, let's just open entity. Okay, it's here, so report director goes here. Okay, so array rows, and it can be empty by default, and array totals, it can be also empty by default. And basically here we just call this report builder, and we do here all stuff that we did in controller. So in case if we don't want to call all this builder logic here, we can easily just move this logic into our director. And this is the main purpose of director class. You can type here, you can just move here all your builder logic that you want, just if you don't want to place it in your controller or anywhere else. So totals, and we will get report. So this will just return get report. Oh, okay, so let's see. Builders report entities. Okay, let's just sorry, I forgot to import here report builder and also report entities. That's why we get this messages. So entities report, great. Now let's move on to our report controller, and we can just remove this code, and we can type here private report director. So I will type here report director. So that will be now class that will talk to our builder, and we will type here just report this report director, And we can define title as title. Let's see, let's see all the arguments. So period rows. Okay, so we will type here period rows totals. And let's type here tdd report just to see how our entity will looks like. Sorry, not report director, make basic. So we just use this function to make basic report. Okay, and now let's see how our object will look like. And you can see in the end again we get our report object. So that was a practical example of using builder pattern. Of course, you know, there are also different implementations and different ideas how you can use it. And before we are going to end this video, I just want you to show, for example, the B class Laravel, just you to understand that, for example, this DB class, this is a great example how this pattern is used in our Laravel framework. Because, for example, when you have a query builder, you can see that what we do here, we type, so we want to get some object, and you can see we do similar things that we did in our example, but there is different, of course, functions for working with database. But we type that we want to use table. Next thing, we type some conditions. In our case, this is where John, and we get some objects or collection. And this is just a really simple example of using builder pattern internally in Laravel. There is also other classes like HTTP, or for example, what I can also remember. For example, even models, they are also using query builder as builder pattern. So that's how you can use this pattern. And it was first lesson. I hope that it was helpful for you. Now you know a little bit more, and you will get more practice with all this stuff. Just remember that when you're learning all design patterns, you need to do some real practice just to have a practical skill for this stuff, not just, you know, some basic examples that all you know, articles gives you when you start learning design patterns. So yeah, that's all, and thanks for watching.